Welcome to Desert Well, a place where we gather like travelers, finding refreshment and community around life's most essential source. Throughout history, wells have been places where people pause their journey, places where they share stories and find the sustenance they need to continue on. But we're here because we've discovered something even better. Jesus promised that whoever drinks from the water he gives will never thirst again. That living water doesn't just satisfy, it becomes a spring welling up to eternal life. So whether you're navigating the challenges of family life, wrestling with questions of faith, or simply trying to live faithfully in a complicated world, we invite you to pull up a chair around this well. Here, we'll explore how God's unchanging word speaks into our everyday experiences, offering wisdom, hope, and the kind of refreshment that truly lasts. This is Desert Well, where life's conversations meet living water.
Welcome back to the Desert Well, another Friday where we get to be together. Glad to have you with us as we do gather around the well that is Jesus to drink deeply from his good news. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that one today, especially in a certain way, and then also to be a part of the conversation. I know we said this last week, but we've officially, I think we're going to get the money from the Pacific Southwest District for the grant that we got. And so that means we get to go shopping to buy some cameras. So I don't know if it's like a next episode will be in person or not. We got to figure out how all of those go. But we're still excited for that in our future together. It'll be very different, Derek. I don't know. The whole vibe will change because right now I'm looking at a screen and a camera. So we're going to have to figure out how much do we look into each other's eyes or like, do we look away? Like, what's that dynamic going to be like when we talk?
We're going to have to relearn how to talk to each other.
Yes. It will either become, I imagine there'll be like a process where it'll be super awkward right away and it'll be really weird. But then over time, I would almost imagine it will become more conversational and more, not that this isn't a real conversation, but it'll become even more of a real conversation that way into the future. So that aside, today what we want to talk about, which I think fits again somewhat with, we're kind of going down call it a health channel or a health rabbit hole. So we talked about parenting in the digital age, talked about kids' mental health. Last week we talked about meditation. And at the seminary, I went through a pilot class on, I think it was called the Wellness Wheel. I forget if it was or not. But basically it was hey, how do we make sure that pastors, when they leave this place, are actually healthy? And because there's a lot of unhealthy pastors, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all these sort of things. And so we talked through all of these different areas of wellness. And there's quite a few if you think about it. So the ones that we talked about in this class were physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, financially, culturally, and something else. I think there were 7. And so whatever that last one is, I'm really good at it. So good that I can't even remember what it is.
I was going to say, don't ask me because I have no idea. But
which probably means I'm not healthy at it.
But I am glad to hear that they talk about that with you guys at the seminary, because that is, being a pastor is a stressful calling, a stressful occupation that oftentimes doesn't leave you a ton of time to focus on yourself. In a lot of ways, and people just kind of tend to think that the pastors have it all together, right?
That's right. Well, I do, right? Always.
Heavy
sarcasm. Heavy sarcasm here. I know I shouldn't do that. So anyway, so today we're going to talk about one of those areas of wellness, that being relational wellness. And I think I'll throw you the Derek's impossible first question that he doesn't know I'm going to ask him.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. He says, I'm so used to this now, it doesn't even faze me anymore. I'm just ready to be thrown this crazy out there question. So, Derek, I'd like you to think about the best friends that you've had over the course of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to add this qualifier to that, excluding your spouse. So we're going to make the assumption that your spouse is your best friend, right? That they are your companion in all of life, because that's what the marriage relationship is. But beyond that, I would say you need more than just your marriage relationship. So sorry, I'm gonna one more thing for
Go
this
for it.
reason. So it was I think it was in the book Together. Previous Surgeon General under President Obama, I believe, wrote a book called Together about the epidemic of loneliness in America, the problem it is for so many people, the negative health effects of it, worse than smoking a couple cigarette packs a day. I think we've talked about that here, maybe a
Yeah,
little
we
bit.
did. You've
And
talked about
so,
this book before.
right. And so he, in the same book, I think it was that one anyway. Maybe if I'm misquoting another book, whatever. He talked about needing three different connections, which again, maybe we talked about already, but is a good refresher. First being you need that super intimate relationship, right? This is a spouse, the person who I live life with, do life with, I'm incredibly close, the right by my side sort of person. You need friends, so sort of a tighter knit group of people, connections, things like that. And then you need a belonging, a community to belong to. And that even if you are connected in two of those ways, but not all three, you could feel lonely. And so I say, I want to know about your best friends other than your spouse, because you could have your spouse not have any best friends and feel incredibly lonely and incredibly isolated. And so when you think about your best friends, Derek, I'm curious what about your relationship with them brought you to that place of saying, hey, they're one of my best friends, they're the closest to me, and what does it look like to live in that relationship today? So
Yeah, so I would say that I have like 3 different group friends that I would consider to be like my best friends. And I'm not saying that like that each one of these groups like that we talk frequently. Um, so like I've got a group from high school. There's like 3 or 4 guys in that group um, that when we get together, like it's just like we picked up where we left off, right? I've got my college roommates. There was 7 of us that lived in a house. There's 6 other roommates. Um, we still talk fairly frequently. When I say fairly frequently, like a few times a year, maybe once a month, just depending. Um, and then I would say that I have like a group of friends here too, that I'm close with, that know all about us, right? About Beck and I. We kind of have grown with them and their spouses. Even before all of us were married, we were kind of, run around as bachelors, but we weren't. I was engaged. Some of the other guys weren't at that point in time. So, anyways, going back. So one of your questions was how, like, basically, how did those friendships form?
yeah,
Yeah.
like how did
Uh,
you get to a place of saying these are the people that I would consider my best friend? Because there's a process of elimination, right? There were other people you were probably friends with, but somehow these people became the ones.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll talk about my friend Trent first. Trent was and still is one of my best friends. We don't talk as often now, just because we don't live in the same location. Um, but how we became friends is your classic kindergarten story. Like, I'm not even kidding. Um, we both went to the public school back home, and I don't know, you could wear whatever you wanted to, and we both wore a John Elway jersey on the same day because we're both Denver Broncos fans. And I think I sat down next to him and was like, "Hey, you're a Broncos fan?" He was like, "Yeah, you too?" It's like, "Yeah," and that was literally the start of our friendship. And we were very close all throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, um, college too. But then over the past decade or so, we've kind of not lost touch or whatever, but just because of where we live. Um, and one reason that I still include him in that is uh, when my dad was, um, when he was sick, when my dad was literally like his last hours. I flew home from here to Denver. I had hardly any money because it was 2016. We had just gotten married. I bought a last minute flight, so it was like $500. Um, and then I was going to have to rent a car, and it was another $500. And my mom called his mom because they're real close too. And he said, I'll drive and get him. It's 3 hours one way.
Wow.
So he drove and picked me up. And I got home, I think at like midnight. So it wasn't like it was during the day. Right. Um, so yeah, that was super cool. The friendship relationship there. That's something that I will never be able to repay. Right. One of those things. Um, and then with my college buddies, it kind of happened that, I had a group of friends my freshman year. Um, and they all kind of left for various reasons. Left Concordia. And I still have a couple that I was friends with from my freshman year. Um, but I really started hanging out with this group of guys my sophomore year. They all kind of lived together, so I was kind of the outsider that kind of worked my way into the group. Uh,
You
and then
infiltrated the circle.
right. And then uh, yeah, I don't know. We just started hanging out more and got close. And then we all lived in the same hallway, the same dorm, our junior year. And then we all lived off of campus the next year. Um, so I don't really remember how like those started. It was just kind of like, hey, what are you guys doing? Hey, you want to come over and like hang out for a bit? And I'm sure that's how it happened. I don't know. Um, yeah, and then the group of friends here, it was, work buddies that became close, and we would hang out. Like I said before, most of us were bachelors, or at least we didn't have our spouses here at the point. And life just kind of happened to bring us together, and we're still close. So
And so I hear a few threads, right? There's proximity, that whether it's growing up together in Nebraska, right? Whether it's
can you
going
pronounce the hometown?
Ogallala,
Good job.
right? I think that's right.
It is Ogallala.
Do people pronounce it incorrectly?
Oh yeah,
What do they say?
Ogallala or Oglala or Ogallala. I don't know.
Oh
People always made
goodness.
fun of it. They're like, "Where are you from?"
Okay. Well, there you go. So I guess I got it right. So kudos
Sorry,
to you teaching me how to do it
tangent.
right. Um, there's proximity. There's I think like that's the first thing, but then there's also the shared interest, right? So whether it's
Yep.
the John Elway, whether it's we're in a similar stage of life, which I would qualify somewhat as the same thing,
Mhm.
college age. Hey, we're in the same place here in Las Vegas, in a similar sort of not married, or our spouses, bride to be's aren't here yet. Then there's the stuff, and this is to me the one that is the most intriguing, because I think it's what leads to the greatest relational health, is the third one. So there, proximity, you're in proximity with a bunch of people, especially
Mhm.
here in the valley, right? We're in proximity, depending on what kind of circle you draw, with millions of people, literally. But I'm not friends with all those millions of people. Uh, Not that I don't like them, but we're not friends, right? They
You
don't know
don't know
me.
all
I don't
three
know
million
them.
people that live in the valley?
No.
Come on, you've been here a year.
Yes. And I should know all of their names too. And so the second, though, shared interest, and that might boil it down,
Mhm.
right? That like there's okay, uh, whether I like the Broncos or I like sushi, there's only going to be so many people who like sushi. So maybe I'm friends with the people who like sushi in the Broncos, or the sushi in the Vikings, or whatever combination you want to make. But even that isn't necessarily conducive to that, right? I go to restaurants. Well, I don't really go to restaurants. I get food from restaurants, but I'm not really friends with the people that eat at the restaurant necessarily. And so it's really this third thing that, in some ways, I think is mysterious, because in my life, when I think about my best friends, they're not all the same how we got there, sort of thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and so, like My childhood best friend, his name was Thomas. Uh, we did a lot of stuff together. Like we just hung out, and so like that
Hmm.
was our thing, right? We hung out together. When Minecraft was like a thing when I was in high school, we were playing Minecraft on the Xbox. Like
It's still
we
a
went.
thing. It's still cool.
Yeah, we went. He was a hunter, so I went hunting with him. When I was a senior, my parents for some reason let me drive our camper trailer, and we went camping together, like in a like a
Oh yeah.
25-foot long camp. I still like there are some things that I am amazed that my parents let me do in the best way. Like a hey, we trust you. You're a high schooler, like a senior now. You're gonna be an adult. Like okay, you gotta like start taking some of these things on. But anyway, so we did that, and it was just we did a lot of things together, and that's how I would say that happened. Um, Somewhere along there, I would insert my brother as one of my best friends.
Hmm.
That we've done a lot of life. We've talked through a lot of things of life together. We've grown up together quite literally. But I also know that I know now to say that my brother and I are close, having seen a lot of other brother relationships, and that they're not all like ours, sort of thing. And so now I know to say, oh yeah, he is like my best friend. Like he's there. Uh, and that I think is just hey, there's maybe something entirely different about brothers and family, but nevertheless, my college best friend, his name was Nathan. We roomed together for what 2 years? Yeah, and so that was like a proximity, but then
Hmm.
also conversation, and so I don't know that this is where I kind of get into the I'm curious what you would think about this or what other people would think too, that as we're younger we can bond over purely over shared experiences, and that creates connection to us, excuse me, but that as we age, which I think I can call myself an aging person at 33, I'm aging, right? I'm getting older. My frontal lobe I think is fully developed now, right? It's not still developing. That I'm not as impulsive as I was when I was in my 20s, and that as we age and get older, that's a good thing, the shared experience, but it's not enough. And that I think, and this is where I think it even crosses like gender differences, right? So if there's ladies listening, they're probably like, come on, these are a bunch of two men talking about relational health. Like, we should have some woman here who can tell us what true relational health looks like, right? How do ladies connect with each other? All those sort of things. But I think this sort of spans both genders, and that's conversation. It's it's talking, and maybe even more deeply than that, it's real conversation, right? Because I can talk with think about those three things, right? I can talk about the weather, I can talk about sports, I can talk about food, I can talk about even my kids in some ways, to pretty much anybody, right? But there are certain things that, the things that weigh on my heart, the things that I'm struggling with, the concerns I have over the future, my worries for myself, for my family. There are certain things that I'm not just going to tell Joe Schmo, I'm not going to tell my neighbor Clay about those things per se, but I will tell a friend, a best friend. And and I think that's that conversation that makes it easier. So what do you think about that first?
Yeah, I would say that most of the time the shared experience is the door that opens that opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you at least in my experience, you have some type of shared experience, and then um, maybe the first two things really kind of need to take place first, like what you're saying, proximity, and not always, but proximity, and then your shared experience are kind of the first things that happen. But then as you do have those conversations and those doors kind of open, you get more comfortable around each other to where you can say those things. Um, and I think that it's kind of a reciprocal thing too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it can't just be a one-way thing, because then it's just you're talking at somebody, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, and I'm thinking of another one of my buddies here. Um, he and I, we got back when Snapchat was, I don't know if it was popular, if it still is. I don't use it at all anymore. Um, but he and I, we were teaching together, but we thought it would be just an absolute blast to be able to tell kids that we had like a streak going.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would just take a snap of ourselves and send it to each other a day. And like that's literally how our friendship started outside of outside of the
Sure.
classroom. Um,
You're so cool, Mr. Blessing.
oh my goodness. uh, but that led to the conversations,
Mm-hmm.
right? That led to us being able to get together. And actually we were just texting the other day and we're like, yeah, we got to get together. And, I think we might get together this weekend. I should text him and ask. Um, but yeah, I would absolutely say that it's the conversations, right? It's the ability to talk about the deep stuff, um, openly and freely, and know that the person on the other side, is not, I wouldn't say even judging you, because I mean there can be some judgment in a friendship, right? That's not a bad thing. You
Sure.
need people to call you out sometimes, but in a place where you know that what you're going to say, that they're not just going to be like, nah, whatever, right? That they genuinely care about the conversation and what you have to say because they care about you.
And that's a hard thing to it's a hard thing to get to, right? One of the things that I think we sometimes don't want to think about is the time, the effort, the energy it takes to get to a place like that. Because if we have a relationship with someone or with people like that, usually then we want whatever new relationship we have to come about that quickly in that same way, in the short amount of time that the first one did. But that, like you said, is just not normally how those things work. That it takes time, it takes effort, it takes commitment, if you want to use that word,
Yeah,
as well.
commitment's a great word to use, because it is. And I would say maybe that's one reason why, I'm not as close with my high school buddies or my college buddies, right? Is the commitment level is not the same as it used to be, from all of us, right? We just have different things going on, and that doesn't mean that we don't care about each other or love each other, the way that we used to. It just is, we're not maybe as close as we used to be because of that and proximity, but shared interest is still there,
Right.
right? At
Right.
least to some extent.
And so part of this comes too from, the uniqueness of a church and a church family and a school family, because I think there's the opportunity for the first two, but the third maybe doesn't get tapped, or there are not. So I'm a process person, or I like to think that I am, that there's not a lot of inbuilt processes and or structure systems to create the possibility, like you said, opening the door for the third.
Hmm.
So think about a church school family. Okay, proximity. Well, unless you're worshiping online exclusively here, you can't attend our school online, and so that's not even an option. So unless you're doing that, you're here, right? Whether it's for half an hour a week during our family service, an hour a week during Sunday worship. And if you send your kids here, maybe you're here for 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night when you pick them up, and then somewhere in between for this program or that program. But the kids here are here for quite a long time
Hmm.
every week. And so there's that proximity, but then there's also shared interest in, call it priorities, right? So we're here to do the work of Jesus, right? To bring him to people who need him, to help people see all of life as an opportunity to live out the life that he invites us to have and to follow him in. And so we do that in everything. And we're assuming, I think, a proper assumption that you're here for that reason, or at least you're okay with us existing for that reason and being here with us too, or at least at the base of that, at least in our school, that you want your kids to receive a good, proper, right education. And so that's brought you here. Now, those are just like in most other places of life. Those are the two things,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't guarantee that I'm everyone's friend, right? Or that in this context too, right? And this is where we would get into, I think it's Dunbar's number, I think is the guy. And so I think he's a sociologist. Don't quote me on that. But Dunbar's number, I'm pretty sure, says that you as a person can have about 100 or 150, one of the two, connections.
Yeah, like solid connections.
Yes,
150.
like 150 people. And you can know generally kind of who they are, what they're doing, but that anything above that is too much for one person.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's simply too many people here for Derek or myself to be everyone's friend, right? And so this is the challenge, right, of a church that worships like 225 to 250 or so a weekend, that has 300 kids in, plus their parents and related connections. We've now suddenly entered into, there are way too many people for me to be everyone's buddy, which I'm not. That's not my goal ever, to be someone's buddy, but to
have a close relationship with.
Right. Like I cannot have a close relationship with everyone here. There's not enough time, hours in the day. And so that then means we need to think, okay, we're here for proximity. We're here in shared interest. And yet we're not, the connection point is not pastor to everyone. And so what we need to do is say, hey, how can we make this place a place where people are having opportunities to be known, having opportunities to be heard, having opportunities to be loved, having opportunities to be friends, if you want to use that word, or family maybe is a better word we would use here, with each other. And I don't know how many people, when they come here on Sunday, think about this place as a place to find that type of friendship or that type of relationship with other people.
Yeah, I think for some people it starts out that way, right? That they find us because we're a church and school community, and they know that the churches are a place where people gather regularly. And that's always one thing that I talk about too with family or friends. If they're struggling to make connections or friends, in a new town or a new place, I'm like, well, have you tried church? Right. And don't just watch it online, go in person. Right. Because your face-to-face connections are always going to be better. But I would say, even though with our community size, right, like, yes, that Dunbar number, so that is, it's a good number to go off of in terms of like the close relationships of like 150 people that well. Right. And I would say within our community, we probably have 1,000 people right around there, maybe, like, total between the church and the school, right? When you're talking about the whole community.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's pretty impossible for you and I to know every single person, students included, right? To that level of like closeness. I don't want to say like level of care, right? Because we can absolutely care for our people. And I'm not just saying like we as in you and me, but like we can care for our people as an organization. It doesn't have to just be you and me. But I think, though, the unique thing about our situation, and maybe it's not unique, maybe it is more like other small schools and churches, is that it does feel small enough that you still do know everybody. Right. And that's always one thing that I've appreciated, is that I do at least have some connection with pretty much everybody here to an extent. I mean, I'm still meeting people, right? I'm still learning people's names and whatnot, especially at church. If I don't if I don't run into you multiple times, and I am so bad with names, just throwing that out there. Like, so I apologize if I ask you for your name 3 or 4 times. It is not because I don't care. I just, there's so much going on up here, that there's not always enough storage space. I need to update my hard drive or something. Um,
Get more RAM. That's what you need. The short-term
more
memory stuff.
processing power.
That's right.
Uh, but I do think, and that's one thing that I appreciate about our community, that um, that even if we might not have that real close connection, that close connection is, it's possible, right? It's um, and I think that goes more with the proximity, right?
Mhm.
Because we are in proximity and around each other a lot. That is again opening the door for um, the further conversation portion of it.
And yet, if there's no action, right? Proximity just becomes proximity, right? And so it's the whole, hey, what are you actively doing to do this? And I think the heart behind this, right, is that as followers of Jesus, we believe we're created for relationship. You know, I don't know if I said this here or not, but in the Garden of Eden, right, God makes people, and the first thing he says that was not good is what? That Adam was alone. And that's something we don't think a whole bunch about, but in the Garden of Eden, in God's perfect sinless world, God said something he made was not good. I mean, just let it sink in. God said something he made was not good. That's how desperate, that's how much we were created to be known, to be in relationship with people, but yet at the same time, how often do we not do that? How often do we choose to be alone? How often do people go without that sort of thing?
Mhm.
And so, as people who believe that, we want people to have those relationships with, sure, with people here, but more in general, we just want people to have that relational wellness stuff too, right? It's the whole, yes, you have Jesus with you, but you also have people that God works through around you.
Well, and I mean, look at Jesus and his ministry and in his life in itself too. He surrounded himself with people,
Mm-hmm.
right? He wasn't just walking around town to town and like, being the guy that once he was done in a location that he just left and nobody went with him, right? He surrounded himself with individuals that could not just learn from him, but that he could be in a relationship with too. Um, and when you were talking about the whole aspect of, uh, it's not good for man to be alone. Well, I was thinking too about when Jesus sent the disciples out, um, like on their first experience of going out on their own, right? He didn't send them
Mm-hmm.
by themselves. He sent them with somebody.
Correct. Yeah,
And,
great point.
and so there's a perfect example that even God knows that, that we need somebody with us to walk beside us, especially when we're doing things like ministry, right? Or just simply life in general. Now later, of course, they went all their separate ways and they spread out and they did things, but that's because they were ready at that point. They had formed the relationships, the community that they needed, their support group that they needed. They could still write back and forth or come back together and meet and talk about what they're experiencing and all of that. So they weren't alone, even though that they were alone.
So I want to transition into like a how, I don't know, maybe this is not relevant for people, but I want to be very practical. So how do you do friendship, right? So what do you, if you're someone who's listening to this and you say, hey, I don't feel like I have a lot of people like that. I don't, maybe I've also often heard it defined as kind of like what you said with your friend Trent. Do you have a 2 a.m. friend that you could call and they would pick up the phone for you no matter what, or they would drive all the way to Denver for you because that's the kind of friend that they are for you? Do you have that person? So if you don't have someone like that, what what do you do? What could you do? So I have two things, and then
Okay.
so I'm not just gonna throw that on you. Derek's like, what? I have no idea, bro. Whatever. So
I'm used to it by now.
the first, and this is, I'll tell a story. I don't think he'd mind me sharing. So I was talking with Ryan, who was on the podcast a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we were sitting in my office and we had this conversation. He was asking me about Lamb of God and ministry here and what it was like and all those sort of things. And then we got done with the conversation. It was sort of like the time to go. And I said to him, hey, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but Emily and I still are trying to make more friends. And so, do you want to hang out sometime? And like, I went home and told Emily this, and she was mortified. She's like, "What? You said that?" I was like, "Yeah. Like, why not just be honest? Like, why not just be real? Like, this is what I'm asking." And so, we ended up hanging out, and what we ended up doing is we ended up having dinner together, right? So, how many times, Derek, have we had dinner, whether at your house, my house? I mean, we've done it a whole bunch of times, and so I would say to you, right, if you're saying, hey, I don't feel like I have anyone, maybe don't be as bold as I was, or as clear, but maybe you do. I don't know. I truly think that we often hide behind these like weird social norms that I'm not allowed to say that because then it makes me weird. But if I would just be honest, maybe the other person might say, yeah, me too. That's good. And then we're even at a better place if we pretended it wasn't that way. But I would say the first thing, if I was you, would be invite someone over for dinner or go out and grab a cup of coffee. Because, right, it creates two things: proximity and somewhat of a shared experience thing. It might not be a campfire, I mean, standing on a campfire, but you can be sitting in chairs, drinking coffee. You can be standing looking at, your kids play. You can be bowling, golfing, whatever it is. There's something you're doing together that, like you've said, open the door for conversation into the future. So another story, and then I'll let you go. My best friend in SEM at the SEM, Craig, I remember this is kind of embarrassing. So I remember asking him to go disc golfing with me, like frisbee golfing, because I knew I wanted to like force a deep conversation with him. Like I knew I wanted to be friends with this guy, and said, okay, we're going to go disc golfing together, and I'm going to ask him a lot of really deep questions, and we're going to become friends. And sure enough, we're friends now. But just like that level of, and maybe this says more about me than anything else, but that level of, I'm going to go do this with this thing in mind because I want this very outcome. I don't, again, it sounds weird. I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but I think at the end of the day, it might actually be helpful. I mean, think about it. It's got me sort of two great friends in my life.
Well,
So,
I mean, it's again, if you're not going to be bold and you just kind of think that it might happen naturally, I mean, sure, they can. But like, I would say that all of my friend groups in one way, shape, or form is because of an action that I took that it was somewhat uncomfortable, right? I mean, my friends in high school, that was more proximity and shared interest. Um, but like in college, like I'm way more introverted, so I had to be extroverted to some extent to make friends, right? Um, and then out here too, like I moved halfway across the country and I knew one person out here. And I knew him because he was a teammate, but he was 4 years older than I was. So I didn't know anybody out here, right? So that, like, I look at that as like the bold move in and of itself. And then when I got here, I lived with a family in their casita, just salt of the earth people. But again, my introverted self was like, I don't want to be a bother to you guys, right? Um, so yeah, I would say that it takes some bold action, at least on one person's behalf, to start that, to make the conversation going. Because if you don't have that action, then you're just kind of hoping and I guess literally praying that it does happen, but that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes God calls us to act anyways on His behalf for that very reason, right? Like and I always kind of look at it this way too with any situation. right? Sometimes we pray for certain things to happen, and we might have talked about this on here before, and I don't have the perfect analogy for it right now, but it's like you literally have an open door in front of you and you choose not to walk through it. God opened the door for you, but you didn't walk through it. You chose to turn around and go the other way, right? You prayed for that open door, but you didn't physically walk through it. And so I kind of look at the friendships and relationships that way too, especially what you're talking about, right? Like you saw the potential there, and you went for it.
Right. And so I think there's a great tie-in, and then I'll share my next idea for you, to faith and what God has done. Right. So God calls us his children because he's washed us and claimed us as his own in the waters of baptism by faith. But think about, God didn't just say, "Oh, I love you all," and then kind of do nothing, right? God didn't just say, "Oh, you need help," and then, do nothing. God even embodies what this looks like. He comes down, right? He comes down to be not just to come down, but to actually become one of us too. And so there's some really awesome, beautiful incarnation type stuff around here as well, that in true friendship, we sort of become God incarnate for each other, which, in some ways is real, because in conversation with each other, what undoubtedly are you doing? You're exposing the things of your heart and your soul, of your life. And in those moments, like we've talked about, you need law gospel, right? You need someone to challenge you here, but then you also need someone to remind you of the truths of Jesus for you, the good news in whatever it is you're facing.
Absolutely.
And so in that way, yeah, you do become God incarnate for that person in that moment as a Holy Spirit filled believer, that your words are not just yours, but then God uses them for the sake of that friendship. And so in this really weird way, but maybe not too weird, friendship becomes a way that God comes down and uses us in relationship with each other, so that then if you don't have those things, you're missing out on things that God would have for you and the ways in which God moves and acts in this world. So the other suggestion I have, and then this is the only other one I have, so I'll throw it to you if you have any other ideas, but would be a conversation, an hour of conversation, whether it's a week, a month, whatever. And so my friend Craig and I, we talk every single week we try and talk an hour, but sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, depending on season and what's going on. But we talk every week together. And because of that, it's the Justin Early, I've talked about the book here before, Common Rule, Habits of Purpose for an Age of Distraction. In the book, he advocates for this very thing. It's why we started doing it, an hour of conversation with a friend a week. And he says that friendship and relationship is a simple formula, that it's vulnerability over time. Vulnerability over time. And as I filter through that through my head, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because even if I was to fully just bear all of my burdens, etc., to you, right? We've known each other for about a year now. It still isn't going to feel the same because the time hasn't come, right? We've only known each other for a year. Now, in 5 years, that'll be different, right? Because the time will have gone more, and assuming that the same level of vulnerability is there, then that will grow. And so an hour of conversation creates both of those things. It creates the time, because it's a regular repeated thing that over the course of a year is 52 hours of talking on the phone, which sounds like a lot. But then it's also the vulnerability over that time too, that some days are just like, yeah, everything's fine. It's great. Okay, cool. Big whoop. Or some weeks are like, hey, yeah, can you help me think through this? I'm really struggling with this. I'm really wrestling with this. I really need your help, your wisdom, your counsel. And a lot of times what that looks like is not me telling him what to do or him telling me what to do, right? It looks like asking questions. Well, what about this? Or have you thought about this thing? Or why was you say this, but why do you say it in that way? Or how are you doing with this thing? And so an hour of conversation, I think, whether you tell that person, hey, I'm going to call you every single week now for the rest of your life, probably not. But whether it's just you just set a reminder on your phone or on your calendar, you write it down, call Billy, Freddie, Johnny, Sally, Joey, whatever it is, and then you just talk. And, you don't expect it to be life changing per se the first time or the second or the third, even, but that over time, as you experience life, as they experience life together, maybe you grow in friendship in that way. Any ideas or thoughts about how someone might think about relational wellness in today's world, at least trying to put it into practice?
I don't know. Even though I'm introverted, friends have always just kind of come naturally, and I don't know why that is.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if you're somebody that is looking for a deeper relationship and you don't have that, um, I'd say you have to immerse yourself into the community first and start walking through those open doors, right? And that's where again, I'm always going to suggest somebody goes to a church, because it is a location where you are guaranteed to be with other people um, who have been through probably very similar things, um, and most of the time, people are pretty welcoming, right? I say most of the time. Uh,
But I think though the thing you have to add is that you can't just come in and leave, right?
yeah,
That's
it's not
the
walk in and walk out. It's
right,
it's you have to like immerse yourself into it, right? It's not just I go there and worship and then I get up and leave right at the end of
right.
the service and don't talk to anybody, because that doesn't work, right? Because again, it's about what you've said before. It's about the conversation. Even if the conversation is only 5 minutes, well, 5 minutes over time adds
Mm-hmm.
up.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I would just say you got to do that and you got to start somewhere. Um, and I would say be bold. Take those, and I've got a story there too. With like with how Becca and I first became friends, and then how we became, uh, you know, boyfriend girlfriend, and how we are today, like being married. Um, that was a pretty bold move, maybe. So uh, I would just say go for it and see what happens.
Right. And maybe the thing to think about is that most people don't have enough of this. If we're working with the sense that people are lonely and isolated, I forget who it was. Somebody was telling me that in Las Vegas, people don't have people over to their house, that's like a weird thing here. And that's like very strange to me because that's the definition of like hospitality and doing life together in my mind is like you invite people into your space and you're like, hey, come here, take your shoes off, become part of our family, and here's our things that we do. And yeah, our house doesn't look perfect, and it's just kind of what life is like because it's how you live life together. Anyway, so that maybe there's that too, but one more
Well,
thing.
here,
Go ahead.
I need to make this comment because it popped in my head before when we were talking
Sure.
about this, and it popped in my head again. So that's two times usually. The second time that something comes back, I'm like, I have to say it before I forget it. Um, the whole like going over to somebody's house. What did Jesus say to Zacchaeus?
I'm going to your house, bro.
Like,
No,
come
that's not
down
what he
out of the
said.
tree. We're going to your house, right? And what did they probably do when they went to the house? They probably shared a meal together,
Mm-hmm.
right? And think
Right.
about like Jesus and the disciples. He shared meals with them. Jesus
Mm-hmm.
shared meals with lots of different people, right? It's a good time to sit down and converse and to have those converse and have those conversations, to open the doorway for those deeper conversations, right?
So the last thing I'll say is that just like God incarnationally embodies relationship, right? And maybe this is why it all fits together so nicely, is because our God is a God of relationship, right? That he's not just a foreign deity. He's not just out and high in the sky, right? What's the old song? Looking up to the spirit in the sky, I think is the really old, not the really old, but the classic song.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sing it.
Anyway, so God is not that, right? God came down relationally in the form of Jesus, but think also about how does God interact with you and me today in the world? We've talked about it here. It's by the word. And so even our God is a relational, conversational God, that his word speaks life, his word speaks salvation, his word speaks forgiveness, it speaks hope and peace. Fill in the blank. That our God uses conversation, and perhaps uses conversation in a way that we can't even fully comprehend, to do and to make us in relationship with him and with others, and to affect change in our lives. So I think it's a beautiful connection between sort of all the things that we're talking about. So,
Well, and I just want to say this too, right? Like, um, sometimes the conversation doesn't even have to be a big conversation. It can just be something small, and you know, we were talking a little bit about this before, but sometimes the small comments and things that you make to people can really have an impact, right? And a lasting impact, and you might not even know what that is. And so I think that is the power of conversation, albeit whether it's a deep conversation or even just, you know, a piece of gratitude or something nice, kind to say, like that can make that can be the starting point, right? Find somebody and say something nice to them and see what happens.
right, there you go. Maybe that's the takeaway for today. Go away from this place. Speak, as our kids love to sing, speak life, speak life.
There you go.
Whatever that Toby Mac song is.
I'm not
Anyway.
singing the rest of it.
Yeah. Oh, come on. We've been glad that you've been with us this week. Curious what your thoughts are. Did this feel helpful to you? All those sort of things. But we're glad that you've chosen to spend time with us as we've gathered around the well that is Jesus. And we will catch you next week as we do the same.